Welcome once again to 26 North Halsted. I'm your host, George Blaise. If you're a fan of this show, which if you're watching it, you must be a fan of this show. I try to always engage and interview interesting people who are doing things, who are deeply involved in the things that make this city and this region great. And I often don't get a chance to actually speak with some of the young people out here, the future of the Chicagoland area, the future of America and the world. And so today, I'm taking some time today to talk to a very inspiring young man who's really doing a lot out there. He is an author, he is a publisher, he's an entrepreneur, and really an inspiration, not only to young people out there, but I think to everybody who watches this show. Let's say hello today to Aiden Branss. Aiden, good to talk to you today.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is really cool.
It's fantastic. I'm glad that you were able to make the time. I know you have a busy schedule there all day long, but your name came up. I know you've done interviews around different stations and things like that. Particularly here on the block, had a segment about you, and my producer Rachel forwarded me your information and your email there, and I was like, you know what? I don't do enough. I talk a lot of stuff about being engaged and really talking about the problems, the issues, the solutions, and everything that's going on here in Chicago, but I don't often have actual young voices on to kind of speak for themselves, because everything that we're doing here is to create a situation where people like you can grow up and make things better and do better than we did before. So I'm really honored to have you here on the program. And I guess let's start by introducing you as an author. You started back in 2020. Actually, your book is called 2020-2021 From a Teenager's POV was your first endeavor. Tell us the story about how you came to write this book, and kind of we'll go from there.
So, I started writing the book during the midst of the pandemic. I stayed up all night. I was just stressed about the world and everything that was going on. And I was just sitting there and I was drinking a lot of coffee. And I felt really energetic and I felt like I wanted to vent in a way. So, I just opened up a Google Doc and I just started writing this book. And throughout that night, I ended up writing a good chunk of my first book, 2020, from a teenager's point of view. And over the next several months, I just kept working on it and I kept talking about what was going on. And my I wrote the book because I wanted to show the world how teenagers were experiencing the pandemic, because I felt like at the time there wasn't a lot of attention drawn to how kids and teens were feeling, because it was a really hard time on us. And through this book, even though some things are kind of fictionalized, I think a lot of teenagers have been able to relate to it. I think people of all ages, honestly, have been able to relate to the story and what the main character goes through. And when that first book came out, I thought it was just going to come out and nobody was going to really care. But it just caught me by surprise when I sold thousands of copies, and all these people from my high school were coming up to me and saying, like, this really spoke to me. And that's when I really like figured out that like my words had an impact. And from that moment on, I just kind of knew that I think this is what I was meant to do on this earth.
Well, give me a little bit of insight into, just what it was like for you as a teenager at the time you were 15, 16 years old, I guess,
I
when
was
everything started
16.
shutting down. I know that actually in the book itself, I mean, there's a section there where you kind of start about talking about, that week before everything kind of shut down, that first week of March. Which, I got my own memories from that week. But tell us about that week leading up to it, where you started to realize, hey, the news reports are kind of scary, things are getting weird here. Tell me about that period of time for you as a teen.
I specifically remember I was in my English class and I was with all of my friends, and some of those people are a part of the company now. And our English teacher, he went around the class and he said, "Hey, it seems like things are getting pretty serious. Can you guys just promise me that you're gonna stay safe?" And he was a really good guy. He looked out for everybody, and he was just telling us like, please, like, be safe. And when he said that to us, I kind of started realizing like things were getting a little scary. And as the days went on, I just remember we kept hearing more news, and there was more like press briefings from our government and our even our state government. And I remember the last day of my sophomore year in 2020, we were told that we would just be gone for 2 weeks. And I remember me and my friends, we were sitting in the back of class and we were just talking. And I remember one of them specifically said something like, "This feels like the apocalypse, bro." And he was right in a sense. Like, we had no idea what was coming to us, and we literally thought in just a few days that we would be back. And I just remember everyone was just scared and nervous, and nobody knew what was going on. It was a really crazy time, and when I
Yeah,
put that
for sure.
section in the book.
Aiden, one of the things as you're saying that you're making me remember. I remember kind of that first week in March. I started through social media and through doing research for the shows and stuff that I'm doing here. People sending me clips from like overseas of like people dropping dead on the streets of China and stuff, like standing at bus stops. And I was like, what am I looking at here? And I shared it with a couple of my coworkers here and stuff like that. And they were like, don't pay attention to that. This is all propaganda. But it was like literally, being in media, I do a lot. I spend a lot of time seeing what's going on there, and I'd never seen anything like that, and it kind of freaked me out. Even me as an adult was like, wait a minute, something different is going on here.
I get that. I mean, from your perspective, you were keeping up with this stuff more than I was. Like, I can see your point. Like, it was a very, very scary time, and I hope that we never have to go through anything like that again, because that was just awful.
I agree with you on that. I tell you what, Aiden, let's take one quick short break. When we come back, I want to get more into kind of the first response and the feedback you were getting from that book, and then how you decided to make the decision to go ahead and build this into something bigger, a publishing company, and to bring your friends in, and now you're all publishing. So stay tuned. More with Aiden Branss when we return. Welcome back to 26 North Halsted. Today talking with Aiden Branss, young author, entrepreneur, and just an overall great spirit and a great person. Aiden, you got your first book, you've penned it, you've written it, you started sharing it with your friends and classmates, you start to get feedback that, hey, this is really cool. And I understand really the first part of publishing, you were literally like, as people were wanting it, having to print off single copies, get them put together, stapled and bonded and sent out. Tell me about actually going from, just doing it one at a time to kind of saying, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Yeah, so, I think the best piece of advice I could give to other people is you're never going to be able to do anything by yourself. You always need other people helping you. And when I was making that transition from just physically making the books myself to actually having a high quality printing company do it, um, it really started with my friend Danny. He, for the longest time, like, he was inspired by what I was doing, and he's like, "Brands, like, this is really cool. Like, I want to do a book." And he kept telling me for the longest time. And I remember one day we were just at my house, and we were just hanging out playing some video games, and it just dawned upon me, like, you know what? I need to do this in a more professional way, because I could tell that Danny wanted to get his story and his voice out there. So I stayed up and I just did all my research, and I was able to figure out, like, oh, I could actually get like a good book made with like high quality paper, high quality covers, just everything just looking beautiful, to be honest. And over time, like, I was just able to like figure things out little by little. And it was definitely a process because I was just a teenager, but I was just really inspired by Danny specifically. And he, if it wasn't for him, I don't even think I would have this company. But it was a process that it took a little time to figure out, but I eventually did.
It's good to have a good team with you. Like you said, it's a cooperative effort between you and your friends there. One of the things I noticed in the writing style, in your writing style, and this is particularly, something that's unique to someone your age and an author your age, is that you write in kind of the style that the world your generation is living in. The way that text messages flow, the way that vlogs flow, it's might be different. It might be a little weird to people my age who are reading it, but this is how you live your life and how you all communicate. And I like the way you kind of translate that to the page. Tell me about that style.
The Chicago Tribune described it as a cross between a text message and a diary, and I do agree with that. When I was writing that first book, I wrote down what I was thinking, and I wanted people my age just to be able to connect with it. And I have heard from older audiences like this is very unique, uh, and it's definitely like a new type of style. But I really want the readers to understand like how I was thinking, how I was talking, how other teenagers were at the time, and just in general. I think writing it in this specific style people are just able to connect with it more. And I just think it's something unique that you don't really ever see in like the mainstream publishers.
It's certainly, I agree with that as well, and I'm glad that you're getting that positive feedback. You mentioned that now you have kind of a collective or a team at Aiden Branss Books. Tell me about the rest of the members of your team. Do you guys all kind of write in the same genre? I know yours is kind of like, your most recent book about Evil Murphy is kind of more of a time traveler. What would you do if you could change the future? Actually, let's go ahead and talk about Evil Murphy. What's the story behind that one?
So the concept of Evil Murphy is we took all the original characters from 2020 and we put them in like this like action sci-fi kind of story. I know it's not like what we were going for originally, but I think in my opinion that I told my perspective and me as an author, I want to go in a new direction, but that's why someone like you read with his book back there, The Short Kid from Pakistan, like that's more of like a grounded story and it's about it's a fictionalized version of his own time growing up in Pakistan and he's been able to connect with a new type of audience that I wouldn't be able to connect with. I think a lot of immigrants have actually really, really liked his book. And from my perspective, I really can't, speak on that. So for Evil Murphy, I just wanted to do something fun and cool and something also just kind of unique.
It absolutely is, and that's the other thing that really stands out about the collective and the team of writers and partners that you have in your organization now is that it's really diverse. I mean, you have people from all different walks of life and experiences. It's a reflection of your generation and how you all think. People might think, coming from Palatine or something like that, that it's not very diverse. Actually, it really is.
No, it definitely is. And my company, we're all for diversity and just showing different perspectives because again, I told my point of view. Now it's everyone else's turn to tell their point of view of the world. And I think the more books we put out with different stories and different perspectives, we could just reach a bigger audience and young people or even whoever wants to read the books, they have just a lot of options and maybe say like Evil Murphy isn't their style, but they want to read about Apollo Darwin or something, they have like that option. And like we do like all work as a team. Like we come together, we all have our ideas, but everybody just kind of does their own thing. And I'm really proud of everything we've been able to put out. And all of our books have been able to speak to tons and tons of people, and sometimes even inspire people. And that's honestly all I was ever trying to do. So I'm pretty happy about like everything we've done and put out.
Well, you should be really proud of yourselves, and we're really proud of you. And I'm glad that I have this platform here to spread the message wide and loud about everything in the work that you all are doing there. I wanted to ask you, do you have inspirations as a writer? Are there writers out there, young fiction or otherwise, that inspire you that you're like, wow, this is really cool, and that kind of keep you going?
I do have some of my own inspirations. I think to name like a few specific books, like The Outsiders, like that was a story just about like a group of young people, or even how J.K. Rowling did it with the Harry Potter series, like just having like just such detailed work, and like it's just these long books with so much continuity and lore. I just really, I really respect that. And even the likes of Hunter S. Thompson, who wrote a book called Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is a really crazy book. But I think the writing style for him specifically kind of inspired me, because he's writing from a first person perspective, and he's just kind of writing down his thoughts, which is what I did for 2020. But even people like Dr. Seuss, I mean, I know it's not the same genre, but like that man did so much, and he made so many good books that people love 60 years later. And even the likes of Stan Lee, who created this large universe of superheroes, like even if I'm not directly inspired by like everything they've written, like I just respect like what all of those people have been able to do.
That's it's fantastic to hear such a broad range of there. You ever read any Grant Morrison? I know he's, since you mentioned Stan Lee as another comic book writer, we're gonna have to
That
talk
sounds
about
familiar.
we're gonna have
That
to talk
sounds really
about
familiar.
we'll talk about Grant Morrison after the program. We're gonna take a short break. We'll be back with more just a moment. Welcome back, 26 North Halsted. Today, talking with Aiden Branss, a young author, entrepreneur, and just inspirational person. Aiden, I understand, not only, writing and getting engaged in building this company and being an entrepreneur, you also dabbled a little bit into politics and learned a lot about kind of how the sausage is made in that sense. Tell me about your experience in politics and what it informed you and educated you on as a young person in today's crazy political world.
Well, it was a really interesting time for me. I was 19 years old when I ran for office. So already, like, that was just making waves, and that was just something like you never really see, like a teenager running for public office. It was a very, very crazy time. But I'm really glad that I went through with it. And even though I didn't win the election, I think that I still made a huge impact, and thousands of people voted for me and they agreed with me. Um, it was hard. There was a lot of hard moments. There was times where I was exhausted at the end of the day, but I knew I was fighting for good causes, specifically just with education and speaking up for student rights, because I'm a young person myself and I got to speak up for my people. And I did everything I could. Even though we weren't successful, it was still a really great experience. I got to meet a lot of great senators, state senators. I met Governor Pritzker during that time, and we had a really good conversation. Um, I'm very grateful for everyone who voted for me, and if I ever if I ever got back into it, I definitely think I would wait a little bit because things now are a little crazy.
No doubt.
Um, I, I I'm just very grateful for all the support I had, and it was one of the best times of my life, and I have no regrets.
For sure, and from what I understand, you also learned a little bit about it's not just coming in with great ideas and saying I'm going to change things. Change is hard to come by, and a lot of compromises happen behind the scenes. A lot of which I understand that you were kind of like, this is not the way it should be, and kind of made you back down a little bit. Like I don't want to be answering to all these different people and sources. I actually just want to do good, and sometimes it's hard to do good.
I definitely felt like there was certain issues where I could not compromise my beliefs, especially when it comes to the students. I just knew what was right, and if I was elected, it definitely would have been a process to get things changed, like things would have had to get passed. Everyone would have had to agree on it. But I would have fought, and I think even in the campaign I fought hard, and it was a crazy time, but I am a little proud though because some of the things I did mention during the campaign, even though I didn't win, they there's been some new things passed in the school board, and it brought a lot of awareness, and it got a lot of young people engaged with politics. A lot of young people voted for the first time ever. So we did make a change, just not in the most direct way, but I'm still very proud of what we were able to do. You know, having hundreds and hundreds of first time voters come out for me was just something that that feeling just can't be replicated. It was just it was an amazing thing, I think.
That's fantastic, and kudos to you on that. And in speaking of engagement, I have teenage children, well, newly teenage children, just entering their teen years now, and just trying to relate and understand like the way that young people use social media, the things that they find engaging, and the ways that they're able to adjust and to create. Particularly, we just had this brief TikTok ban for 24 hours that went through. The panic that led up to that amongst my daughters and their friends, and just seeing how they've created this whole world here that we as adults don't really understand. I think we as adults, before we make huge decisions like shutting the lights off on an app like that, we have to actually understand what's going on and how they've created a world that's really is beyond us as older people.
No, I completely agree. I'm kind of in like the phase where like I'm going into adulthood now, and I'm not necessarily a teenager, but I'm not necessarily an adult. I'm only 21. But speaking from experience, like just social media was something like I was so engaged with, like everybody else my age. It feels like a completely different world, but that's where a lot of young people communicate and get their news and information from. And when that TikTok ban did happen for 24 hours, I was kind of sad. I do like TikTok. I watch it pretty often, but it's like its own little world. I definitely prefer doing things like in the real world and communicating with people IRL, but I it has just a huge impact on the youth, and I think that's something that just can't be ignored, you know?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And Aiden, just between you and I'll tell you what, that last couple of hours there, watching people crash out on their lives, if you weren't there for that last couple of hours, you missed. I don't think anyone did any screen grabs or anything, but if you want to see the world come unglued, those last 3 hours before the TikTok man, I wish I could have recorded some of that.
It was entertaining. I saw some of that. It was funny.
There's great symbolic stuff going on there. What's in the future? What's lying ahead? What's your next publication?
So we just announced a few new books the other day. We have four brand new books coming out. So by Daniel Castro and Yurid Zaidi, we have a book called Damaris and the Shore Kid: The Hunt for the Golden Keys. By our newest author, Evelyn, she's coming out with the book called The Invisible Battle. My friend Ryan Kenobi, who's actually serving in the Marines right now, he has a book coming out in May called Segun's Journey. And then my friend Jaquel is writing a sequel to his book called The Pyromaniac Book 2.
Man.
And I have my own book coming out, but I can't talk about it yet. It's too early.
All right, all right. Well, you know what? I don't.
October 1st.
We're not going to
You'll
give
see.
everything away, but I tell you what, we gotta cut to a break here. When we come back, I want to give everyone all the information they need to get more of the publications coming from your team. Stay tuned. Back with more in just a minute. Welcome back. Oh man, inspired today by the youth in our area doing great things. Aiden Branss, publisher, author, entrepreneur. Quickly, if people want to get a hold of all the publications and to follow everything that's going on with you and your team, what are the best ways to see you?
Well, you could go check out our website, aidenbrandsbooks.com. That's where we got all of our information and everything is updated on there. And you could find out if we're doing any events, or any new media things or new books or anything, you can also check out our Instagram, Aiden Branss Books. And if you're specifically looking for our books, you could go to Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and you could ask if they have it in stock. You could check pretty much any book retailer online. Our books will be there. And yeah.
That's fantastic. Aiden, I'm so glad I was able to get in contact with you, and thank you again for making some time for us today. Once again, you're one of these people who I know we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the coming years in the future. You know, when you're winning your first Oscar there for your first major motion picture, don't forget to remember, you know, back in Chicago, this guy George Blaise had me on my show when I was 20. Just don't forget the little people.
I won't forget you, George. Thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week right here on 26 North Halsted.